How problematic is it when a witness testifies through an interpreter, especially when the language translation doesn't seem to be exact, meaning, and I say this just because I'm also South Asian, I come from a different country, and I know that sometimes the translation isn't word for word. It sometimes doesn't make sense. It makes sense in the original language and doesn't make sense in English. So from what you gather, is this a problem for the jury to comprehend her and therefore find her credible?
Well, great question. I think it makes it more difficult for the jury to follow. I think it destroys the synchronicity of the testimony, so it might lessen the impact of the testimony. But at the end of the day, I don't think it impacts the jury to a point where they don't believe what she's saying. You know, in a perfect world, you know, she would respond to the question, and you might see a little bit more emotion. That's really what you lose with the interpretation. You lose really any sense of emotion about what happened, and I think that might impede the prosecution a bit. But look, at the end of the day, if she's explaining what happened and she's certain that it was Kellen Winslow II, then I think it'll have an impact on the jury. And I think this is really, again, more about let's build up a mountain so that we can get a conviction on the 3 forcible rape charges.
Terrific point on the loss of emotion, but let's go talk about certainty, because she did explain that she never identified him in the past. So before, when the arrest process, she did not pick him out of a lineup. She described him as being 8 inches shorter and of medium build. So her identification was problematic. I do understand that she did not do the in-court identification. Do you see anybody in the courtroom point him out with an article of clothing? Nothing like that happened. But she also explained that in her culture, she did not, it's their practice to not look at strangers in their eyes. So do you think the prosecution overcame the hurdle of the lack of identification?
I don't think the prosecution overcame that hurdle, but I think what the prosecution did do is when you combine the testimony of Jane Doe number 3 with, remember, the testimony of Jane Doe number 1, where she clearly missed the identification of Kellen Winslow II. I think what you do when you accumulate the testimony together, combine Jane Doe 1 with 3, the defense attorneys are doing a good job of at least creating some doubt in the minds of the jurors that, hey, maybe these women don't really have it right. Maybe they can't get this right. And that's what they're hoping for here. But look, at the end of the day, I know what the prosecution's doing, and I can't blame them. I mean, what they want to do is they want to convince this jury that Mr. Star football player, Mr. number 1 draft, who made $40 million in his career, who made the Pro Bowl several times, that this married man who has kids is capable of doing these perverted, nefarious acts. That's what the prosecution's got to do. They've got to break down this image of Kellen Winslow II, that he's not the kind of guy that could do these bad things.
Okay, Brian Claypool, I'm going to ask you to stay close, and our coverage of California versus Kellen Winslow II continues in a moment. Let's bring in criminal defense attorney Brian Claypool, who is still with us live from the San Diego courthouse, watching this trial unfold along with us. So, Brian, talking about the body cam video that came in, I was very surprised that it came in via stipulation, because the body camera video, to most defense attorneys on this planet, could be argued that it is not only prejudicial, it is also cumulative, and it is bolstering the prosecution's case when it comes in right after you have the live witness actually talking about this. I do not understand how this came into evidence, and it certainly helped the prosecution and hurt the defense. Your thoughts?
Well, Seema, I tend to disagree with you again. Remember last Friday when we were talking?
Why, Brian? Why do you disagree with me again?
On the last day jury selection, Yeah, I mean, come on. This trial has been like the weather in San Diego. It's sunny 1 minute for the prosecution, cloudy for the defense, and then vice versa. You know, this trial, can I give you the analogy? This trial is like trying to date in California. One day you're happy, you're on top of the world. The next day you're down in the dump. And I guarantee you, that's how the prosecutors are feeling about this case, and that's how the defense lawyers are feeling about this case. The human aspect of this trial, a high-profile trial, 3 forcible rape allegations, life imprisonment at stake. I mean, this is an emotional roller coaster for the prosecution, the defense lawyers, and Jane Doe 3 is a perfect example of that. It's just what you're talking about. 1 minute, oh no, she can't really identify Kellen Winslow II. She hasn't talked to her husband yet. But then comes along the dash cam, and that really helps then the prosecution. So it's a sunnier moment for them. But look, getting into the evidentiary aspect of it, I think the judge did the right thing. I think it comes in. There's no hearsay issue. It's authenticated. In other words, it's authenticated. It's part of the business practice of the police department, and it was taken in the normal course of the police department's response to a call. So I don't think it's kept out as hearsay, and it is relevant as to the state of mind of Jane Doe 3 at the time this alleged incident went down. So I think the judge made the right ruling, and I think it did help at that moment the prosecution.
I agree that it clears the hearsay threshold and, of course, is absolutely relevant. I mean, what are we here for? That's exactly what we're here for. I was surprised it came in through stipulation. I was surprised that this was not argued pre-trial in the pre-trial hearings, that it should be allowed out based on prejudice, cumulative, and bolstering, because those are other objections that are separate and apart from hearsay.
Yeah, Seema, let me ask you a question, if you don't mind. I'll turn it around on you.
Go for it.
What about that dash? Yeah, okay, so I'm quasi-anchoring for 5 seconds.
Go for it, Brian.
What about that dash cam? Do you think, what do you think about that dash cam as either irrelevant or prejudicial?
It's prejudicial because it's the same exact statement that she just said on the stand. She just testified to the same thing. It's like she's getting 2 bites of the apple, and that is prejudicial. So in the balancing act of the law, to tell our viewers, we weigh things. Probative versus prejudicial. Does it tend to prove something versus the potential prejudice to the accused person? In this case, we've already proven what her statement was. She already testified about this, right? So the prejudice is that it's going to bolster the prosecution's case. It's the gravy on the mashed potatoes. It's going to make it better. It's going to make it tastier. And the cumulative issue. Okay, so here's another issue that comes up in the law, is that you can't put like 10 pieces of evidence that are exactly the same thing. And that's what happened here. Those are my objections, Brian Claypool. How did I do?
All right, well, I would sustain a couple of your objections, but I'd overrule on one count. The overruling aspect would be on the cumulative part, and here's why I think it comes in. Because you can argue that her live testimony today is a little bit at odds with what was said in the through the dash cam video. So arguably, you can use the dash cam to what's called refresh her recollection of what happened at the time of the alleged incident. But you do, I gotta give you credit, Seema. You're a rock star. You make one good point here, which is why would the defense? Why would the defense? Seriously, why would the defense agree to allow that dash cam video in without even knowing, for example, what the substance of her testimony was going to be live in the courtroom? So I think that was a mistake. You make a good point. They should have waited. They should have not stipulated to that dash cam coming in and then see how she testifies in court and then have an evidentiary hearing on whether it should come in. So
thank you.
You win on that.
Yeah, well, thank you, kind sir. And that's the whole point of it. Okay, let's bring our buddy in, Brian Claypool, who's still live.
Do you know what Brian would do on cross-examination?
Well, we're going to hear. What's Brian going to do on cross-examination? Let's hear from Brian Claypool, who's still live at the courthouse. Okay, Brian, your friend Vinnie Politan is throwing your name around in the studio. So what do you think about this breaking news? Jane Doe #1's daughter may be coming in next week, maybe.
Yeah, Yeah, Vinny made it. Yeah, Vinny made a great point, which is you got to know when to fold them. I mean, Jane Doe number 1 was just atrocious. No offense, but she just had no recollection, couldn't identify Kellen Winslow. She had a chance to run away, didn't run away. But here's something to think about. I just thought of this. If it's true that the daughter said the exact words, here's a black man getting out of jail, he attacks women. If that's the exact comment she made, the defense might want to consider bringing that in to show that she didn't say he attacked me. He attacks women, didn't attack me. That's something they might want to work with.
Okay, Brian Claypool,
If he attacked her, why didn't she say he attacked me and assaulted me?
Okay, I'm going to ask Vinny that, but I don't appreciate the two of you ganging up on me, but I'm still going to ask you to come back very soon, Brian Claypool. Thank you so much.